He's editor-in-chief of Breitbart News and a New York Times best-selling author. And on this podcast, he brings deep research, prescient analysis, and world-class guests. He's Alex Marlow, and this is The Alex Marlow Show.
All right, this is The Alex Marlow Show. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. Should we christen the broadcast? Should we do it? Should we do our special? I think we will. Let's christen the broadcast. You're missing out if you're not on YouTube or Rumble and you don't see this.
So let's preserve this secret place for our time and forever, for the benefit of all humanity. Thank you very, very much.
And now Joe Biden wanders off into the Amazon rainforest and was never seen again. He actually was spotted this week. We'll talk about where he was momentarily. But Thomas Tolleson emailed me saying that he loves the new show. He requests until Joe Biden leaves office, I have to remind everyone at the start of the show that he's still lost in the Amazon. It's not true. He turned up. We know where he is. He made it back to the White House for the turkey pardon. So we'll talk about that in a second. But those of you who've been emailing, it means a lot. I'll get to a few at the end of the show, but aloha at alexmarlow.com. Subscribing wherever you get your podcast is big. Leaving comments, engagements, participating with me on social media is very good. All this helps me a lot. We're trying to get some momentum for the show. I had a really great meeting with the Salem ad sales team, and everyone's very happy with the way the show is doing so far, which is great. But I will tell you, I want this to be the biggest show in the world, and it's not going to get that way without all of your help telling 10,000 friends and family members about what we're doing. Why don't we start with it? Joe Biden was doing a turkey pardon. This happens every year. And I'll tell you that if you want to know why Joe's president, look no further than this clip. You're missing some of the visuals if you're not watching it. But if you are listening, I think you get the gist. Here he is, Joe Biden.
What did you say, Peach? Peach is making a last-minute plea here. The two turkeys are named after Delaware state flower, the peach blossom. And by the way, Delaware has a long history of growing peaches. In fact, the peach pie in our state is one of my favorites. It's a state dessert. And peach blossom flower is also symbolizes resilience, which is quite frankly fitting for today.
Man, he's good. So if you're missing out on the visuals, he's at the White House. There's a giant white feathered turkey. A little boy is petting the turkey, and the turkey was gonna be slaughtered for a delicious Thanksgiving dinner. And let's not forget those leftovers, delicious turkey sandwiches following. But apparently this turkey is going to get to live. How much longer does the turkey live after this? Would you ever follow up? Does anyone ever try to track down any of the pardoned turkeys, see what kind of life they led?
This White House tradition began when turkey was presented to President Truman. And that president, then President George H.W. Bush, began pardoning turkeys. In the last 4 years, I've had the honor to continue that tradition by pardoning peanut butter and jelly, chocolate and chip, Liberty and Bell, and today, Peach and Blossom will join the free birds of the United States of America.
It's unbelievable that we are about to have Nazis enter the White House. The type of people who would hold a rally in Madison Square Garden. The type of people who would joke about Puerto Rico being an island of garbage. Those types of people are about to enter the White House, and he's got time to joke around with a bunch of giant birds. Amazing. Amazing. These guys are so lost. But I love this version of Joe Biden. He looked cool, well-tailored in his suit. Great aviators on. The old school Arcana references. All right. That's what Joe's up to. I'll start the show with an interesting one. I was on Donald Trump Jr.'s Rumble broadcast called Triggered last night, and he made a very interesting suggestion that I wanted to address at the top of the show. Donald Trump Jr. floated someone who could perhaps run MSDNC, as he calls it, if Elon Musk were to buy it. And he suggested yours truly. And I've been giving this a lot of thought over the last, I guess it's been like 18 hours since this happened. And I think I'm up for it. So if you all have an idea of what I should do if Donald Trump Jr. and Elon Musk install me in charge of MSNBC, Please let me know. Aloha at alexmarlow.com. What type of shows would you like to see on the broadcast? That's what I'm looking forward to, is hearing from you guys. What do you want to see? And I've been really thinking about this critically because some of these things that you would think are pie in the sky are not in Elon Musk's America. He's trying to make America more fun and more ironic and more trolly and more meme worthy. And so it would make people's heads explode if the editor-in-chief of Breitbart was put in charge of the network of Rachel Maddow and Joy Reid. And I was thinking, what would I want to do there? And I really want to spend time on this, and I want your feedback before I give my definitive take. But I've already got one outside-the-box idea that I think is important, is that I don't think I would fire everyone. I don't think I would go in and say, Joy Reid, you're fired, Rachel Maddow, you're fired. I think what I would do, though, is, of course, they get pay cuts for sure. Rachel Maddow is getting $25 million still to work 1 day a week. That's not going to happen. But I would, I think, ask at a reduced pay rate for them all to stay and just actually have to defend their own ideas. They're going to have to take criticism and actually debate. And they're not going to have to debate people who are mostly Democrats, but maybe used to be registered Republicans. They're actually going to have to defend themselves. If they want to still keep their paycheck, which they probably won't. They'll probably all quit. But I think it's more powerful if they quit versus them all getting fired, for one. And for two, if you look at what is working online on YouTube, Rumble, et cetera, you know what really pops? Debates. When people actually have to defend their ideas. And I think we on the right, we like a debate because our ideas are good. That's why you get people like, Charlie Kirk, who's just showing up on campuses and just debating anyone will show up. I bet Ben Shapiro's career blew up when he started showing up on campuses and debating the people who were there. So I think it'd have more debate show. I think that's number one. That's my first idea for when I take over MSNBC, should Elon Musk and Donald Trump Jr. Give me that privilege. So it's number one. And then other stuff that you would think of off the top, you've got to try to co-opt some of these long form podcasts that are in vogue. You got to get some of that going. A lot of citizen journalism stuff that you find in the X platform first. That's got to go in there. Obviously, a lot of Breitbart content would have to be a part of it. But I really want to hear some of your ideas. But my first big one is not firing all the lefties that are there, just making them, if you would like to get your big paycheck to continue to be in this network, you actually have to defend yourself. You can't just do what you're doing, which is just lying and smearing all of us. And if you're willing to do that, then you can stay. You can stay. But not for $25 million a year. That's not going to happen. But I am very much genuinely curious if any of you have thoughts, because it seems like it's a far-fetched thing, but nothing is impossible in Musk's world. And if you were really going to buy it, who would you put in charge of it? Do you think editor Breitbart would be up there in terms of who would maybe get the nod? So I would obviously consider it. What an adventure that would be. We have to move everyone to New York, I think, right? There's no way you could do it from north of LA in the suburbs. It'd be fun. It'd be a wild ride. All right. Also on that show, by the way, the Donald Trump Jr. revealed that Trump is plotting a White House shakeup for the press briefing room. And he wants to have those types of people who are thriving in the podcast environment, Joe Rogan, Megyn Kelly, et cetera, those type of people asking questions. And I think, of course, we have to do that. This is one of the things that I was deeply critical of Donald Trump, the first administration, and hopefully those critiques have resonated with some people on the inside, which is that you can't only let the worst people in the world, which is the fake news media, the enemy of the people, they can't be the only ones asking questions. I'm not in denial that some of them, New York Times comes to mind, have a constituency and an audience that it would be nice to reach. So they're going to be a part of a press briefing. But why do these same papers with the same perspectives who have no variety, why are those the only people who get to ask questions? And that's what just really confused me during the coronavirus in particular, is that they didn't have any doctors coming in. They had very little new media. You would think that most people now at this point are getting their news from new media. So you would think that would be the priority. And then at the end, you have some time for the New York Times. That's my thoughts on that. So I think that's a big deal. But I mean, wouldn't you like the biggest people from the X platform, the biggest accounts, like them on there, Musk himself? Wouldn't that be more? He's got 200 million followers. So wouldn't letting him ask a question, isn't that more relevant than having the New York Times ask a question? Of course it is. So I feel like that should be the norm, and this could really be a historic change if the Don Jr. is serious about it. I was thinking about how Musk, the Musk derangement syndrome, is really getting pretty delish. Gavin Newsom out in California has proposed a EV credit, but he's excluded Tesla. So in my neighborhood, just north of LA, it's almost like required for you to have a Tesla for you to actually live in the neighborhood. You have to have one. It doesn't all have to be the fancy ones, but you got to have a Tesla or else you're not welcome. They actually kind of tap on your door and say, "Is everything okay? Like, where's your Tesla? We couldn't find it anywhere." So it's without a doubt the most popular car in the area, and Newsom doesn't want to give it a credit. Why? Because he doesn't like Musk. There's no other reason. Tesla is everything the Green left wanted in a car company. It is minimalist. It is electric. It is from an innovative company that's trying to not rely on fossil fuels. Everything the left would like. So, but not good enough. It's one of the things that's happening, and this is, I think it'll air tomorrow, but at the Breitbart Fight Club, my Breitbart Confidential interview with John Carney, which is probably going to be for Wednesday, but I've already got it in the can. We talk a little bit about how companies now are scaling back their DEI. And the one that comes to mind most is Walmart. Walmart is pulling back on DEI, removing LGBTQIA, 2-spirit, 3-spirit, 4-spirit, 5-spirit, 6-spirit merchandise from its website, because apparently there's not enough 6-spirit people out there to justify the bad press that they get from too much woke stuff. So DEI is, of course, a cancer in this country, and it is the end of meritocracy. It's the end of excellence. Only a country that doesn't believe in excellence, that believes in identity politics and identity politics above all else, would have DEI as any part of their core parts of society. And so you're seeing a bit of blowback from the DEI craze that took place. It's been happening for a while, but it really hit a peak after the George Floyd death in 2020. And you're seeing some companies swing back. The pendulum swinging back. Tractor Supply, Molson Coors, one called Brown Forman, which owns Jack Daniels and Old Forester, which are a couple of whiskey companies, among others. All of them have had DEI taken it off. So Walmart's doing this now. And so big story here and this was on Monday of this week, that they were ending their diversity initiatives. The nation's largest employer, 1.6 million people work at Walmart. And they're just saying, we're not going to do it. We're not going to do any more DEI stuff. It doesn't work. Ford, Lowe's, Anheuser-Busch, Target. Oh, Anheuser-Busch and Target, no, not necessarily. Anheuser-Busch and Target have faced backlash and falling sales. That's what they're highlighting here. I'm looking at a CNBC article. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal. Shows we're winning. We're on the march. And I think people have got the picture that in Donald Trump's America, that is, you're not just going to be able to do the woke stuff without consequence. Conservatives were never really activist with our purchases. When we went to the marketplace, we mostly just wanted to buy the products we wanted to buy. And it was very difficult to get us to engage in any boycotts. But occasionally, some of them have worked, Anheuser-Busch being the biggest example. But it's time for us to do this. I made my peace with this a long time ago. When Breitbart was getting boycotted a lot after Donald Trump won in 2017, there were companies that would pull their advertising, and sometimes they'd come back, and that's forgivable. I understand it, that you got to make money, and if you're getting associated with a brand that's so edgy that you can't handle the heat, I can actually understand that. But some of these companies, like Kellogg's, for example, would make public pronouncements that they disavowed stuff we stood for, and of course, they'd misinterpret what we stand for. Now, those companies need to be singled out and boycotted, which is why I don't buy any Kellogg's products, and I haven't ever since. And you shouldn't either, by the way, because when it's a step way further than we're just not going to advertise there for a little bit, to go out and say that we're going to push the trans stuff. We're going to hire based off of women men who think they're women, or women who have a penis. The female penis. If you're going down that road, then you and I are not going to see a lot alike here. And I'm running Breitbart, so maybe we won't have your advertising. But if you're making public pronouncements about it, that's where things, I think, go to a place where you're better off boycotting and just saying, we're not going to do it. We can't handle this stuff. Because a lot of them are such hypocrites. I played that wonderful video, I think it was last week, of, I think his name's Chris Wright, the new incoming, the incoming secretary for Trump, who is going to be in charge of energy, Department of Energy. Sorry, fighting a bit of a cold here, guys. I apologize for that. Who had that great video explaining how the North Face, which is the outdoors wear company, relies on fossil fuels, et cetera, to do R&D, for production, for shipping. So they can act as green as they want, but it is fossil fuels that makes all of their products possible. And what's more, before the revolutions that have taken place, due to our ability to use fossil fuels, to have an abundant energy, to make innovative technology, machinery, et cetera, no one had time to go backpacking on the John Muir Trail. Like, you didn't have time to climb the faces of those epic cliffs in Yellowstone, because we were just working on staying alive every day. We had to forage. We had to hunt and gather. We had to try to keep ourselves warm in the winter. All of this changed when fossil fuels became abundant. And if you don't point that out to these wokesters, that if you've this hostility towards the energy sector, towards fracking, towards oil, towards gas, you're just in total denial of how bad humans had it until very recently in the scheme of history. You got to remind people this stuff. So that's where the wokeness has got to go. We got to stop it. It is a pox on our house. And it's glad if Walmart, the biggest company in the world, is saying, we've done the math. Everything we're doing is tested. Everything, we look at data for everything. We survey everything. We got economists on staff. And they're saying we've got to get away from the woke stuff. That is a very good sign. And we got this audience to thank. So I don't think it would be the case if Trump hadn't won, and if there hadn't been a resounding victory to send a signal that people are fed up with the green BS. But so how bitter is that? Doesn't that reveal everything about Newsom, by the way, that he won't give Musk his tax credits? Bitter people on the left, they're joyless. I'm so angry at Musk that I can't give him the tax credit that he deserves with his company. So it gives away the whole game. They don't really think we're all going to die. If they thought we were all going to die from climate change, then you would never get away with something like that. All the green people would be in Newsom's mansion right now. Maybe they'd hedge their bet and half of them would go to the French Laundry to see if he shows up there. 3-star Michelin restaurant in Napa Valley. Maybe they'd be out there with him and they would protest and they say, hey, Gavin, we're going to die unless you give Musk his tax break. They don't believe it. It's all nonsense. It's all about pushing an agenda that Musk is not going to go along with. Fun. All right. Trump keeps making more picks and they're all great. I'm very happy that Dr. Sebastian Gorka, my colleague on Salem, former national security editor at Breitbart, he'll be going to the White House as a senior counterterrorism advisor to President Trump. I've been popping up on Gorka's shows quite a bit. I was on yesterday after we released this podcast. Always great to talk to him. A close friend, a great man. Glad he's back in there. But this story gets more interesting because this guy who I've never met named Michael Anton, who people act like is a big deal, though I don't know if I've ever read anything he's written or care much about him. But he's one of these guys that everyone tells me is some sort of a genius. He wrote some essay that was popular that I don't remember. But this is honestly, I'm not playing around. Like I don't really know anything he's done other than he wrote some essay that was famous I don't think I read. And he was a leading candidate to become the deputy national security advisor to serve alongside Gorka underneath Mike Waltz. But the reports are that he pulled himself out of contention when he was told he'd have to work with Gorka. He couldn't handle Gorka. We're trying to send a signal, Mr. Anton, that we're a resilient people. We're trying to send a signal that we're tough and that we're the type of people who might want to storm the cockpit if the terrorists take over the plane, commandeer the plane, start driving towards the Pentagon or the White House. We might be the type of people who want to storm the cockpit. So that's the signal we would like to send. So when you say you can't work for the President of the United States on national security issues and counterterrorism because you don't like Dr. Gorka, who is deeply educated, who has a huge audience, is an incredible communicator, and is just super high integrity guy. Like, you can't do that. That makes me think you're kind of a wuss, kind of a weenie, and not the type of person that should be setting policy for the United States. So I got a huge kick out of that. This one guy who's this Twitter person, he calls himself Derek Guy. I have no idea his real name. He's theorizing that Anton won't work with Gorka because he doesn't like the way Gorka dresses. He doesn't like Gorka's yellow ties. It doesn't sound impossible to me, but it was amusing. I had to bring that up. But that's so great. It just makes the victory getting Gorka in there even better. So great stuff. This cabinet is just looking fantastic. Yeah, General Milley says America will be okay under Trump. What is it, guys? Are we Nazis? Or are things going to be okay? You can't have it both ways. Is climate change going to kill us all? Or should Musk get his tax break? You can't take away the tax break and then say climate change is going to kill us all. They don't care about this stuff, do they? Consistency has never been one of their values. Tracking the meltdowns. We're tracking them. Here is Alec Baldwin. He's overseas when he said this, by the way. I got to play this. The actor who shot and killed a lady recently. Here he is.
There is a gap, if you will, in information for Americans. Americans are very uninformed about reality, what's really going on. With climate change, Ukraine, Israel, you name it, all the biggest topics in the world, Americans have an appetite for a little bit of information.
We're voracious consumers of information. I don't understand this. Is that he's acting like half the country that rejects what is being put out by all the 24/7 news networks aside from Fox, what's being put out by all of our major papers, what's being put out by most of our social media platforms aside from one, which we learned is about 50-50. X is about 50-50 politically. What Hollywood puts out, they all put out one narrative, and we rejected it. And so his explanation is that we don't have the capacity for information. No, we have tons of capacity for information. We took in all the stuff the left was feeding us. And then we took in all the stuff that the Breitbarts of the world and the better parts of Fox of the world were putting out there. And we concluded that we're going to try Trump's way for a while. I also like when he throws stuff out there like climate change, Ukraine. He just throws names out there, words, but he doesn't explain what we get wrong. There's no argument being made. It's an attack. It's ad hominem. It's a logical fallacy. That's why if Baldwin wants to get up there and come debate on the new MSNBC run by Marlow, we'll invite him on, but he's got to debate people. He can't just wing it at whatever this is. Where is he in here? Is he in France? I will get this. Let's play this.
That vacuum is filled by the film industry, not just the independent film industry, not just the documentary film industry, which are very important around the world, but by narrative films as well, where the filmmakers and the buyers, the studios and the networks and the streamers are willing to go that way, and they're willing to try to make films that are not only entertaining but informative as well. So I think right now is probably one of the most significant times.
He's doing this thing with his voice where he's modulating it to sound more professorial. Very irritating, and he's not qualified to do this anymore. I think after he pulled the trigger and that woman died, I don't think he gets to do that anymore. I think he needs to be retiring from any sort of lecturing. I think he should be taken off the lecture circuit. He looks sleepy too. Maybe he's just getting old. Maybe I shouldn't be critical. But Baldwin in Italy, I detest this. If you're an American and you benefit from America's largesse, like someone who's been in the film industry for a long time, you do not get to go overseas and trash our country. You can't. You can't make millions of dollars a year to act or per film, be on TV. You get to go out and be treated like you're some sort of royalty, like we do with our elite actors. And Alec Baldwin's a great actor, terrific actor. He's been in some of my favorite stuff. It just ruins all of it. And I just don't, the smugness though, it's good to put it on. It's good for everyone to see it. Good for everyone to see it. I don't need to play any more of this. But yes, the left continues to struggle with what to do in this new era we're in. They don't know whether to go less woke like Walmart or to go attacking American citizens like Alec Baldwin. Or maybe the move is attack back towards the middle, or it could be just to totally freak out. I'm going to play you a clip of the Denver mayor. And in this clip, you're going to see a guy say to what extent he's willing to go to avoid the return of law and order, let's say, in the United States.
People. What happens if the military comes in? What does Mayor Mike Johnson do?
Well, I think if that were to happen, I think that would be illegal, that would be immoral, and that would be un-American. I mean, you're talking about U.S. soldiers who should be coming back to their hometowns as heroes, not coming back as captors. But yeah, if you were talking about putting the U.S. military out on streets to take 14-year-old girls out of a 9th grade history class and arrest them, or to come to a baseball game and pick up someone's mom and dad while they're watching a game, or to come to your King Soopers and pull folks out of line, I don't think any U.S. soldiers signed up to do that, nor do I think that it's illegal for an American president to ask them or require them to do that. And so we hope that is not going to be the plan, but we'll try to be prepared in every way we can to protect the residents here and to uphold the law, which we think that would clearly be in violation of.
Are you open to sending Denver police officers to the county line to stop federal forces or National Guardsmen from other states from coming into Denver?
We have no plan to do that. And we really hope that we don't ever have to do that. I think
no plan, but are you open to it?
What we're going to do right now is, it's hard to keep an eye on what the future president actually plans to do and what the proposal actually is.
So that's Mayor Mike Johnson. He says he's willing to go to jail in order to stop any effort to deport, because it is he thinks that it's his jurisdiction, but if the federal government or state and local governments say that you cannot no longer behave as a sanctuary city, this is not legitimate, we're going to enforce the laws on the books, and if you stand in our way, then there's going to be problems. He said he's willing to go to jail on behalf of making sure America continues to be a lawless place with regards to immigration. So now I want to play to you Tom Homan and how Tom Homan reacted to this. He was on Hannity's show. Here it is.
And if you're a sanctuary state or city, are you breaking the law?
You're absolutely breaking law. All you have to do is look at Arizona versus U.S. You'll see these breaking law. But look, me and the Denver mayor, we agree on one thing. He's willing to go to jail. I'm willing to put him in jail.
I mean, how good is that? He's just a soundbite machine. We're going to get him on. We got to get him on soon, Misty. I got to work on this. I got to talk to Homan. I've interviewed him several times in the past, but he's out there, and it's just, this guy is just, if he doesn't strike the fear of God in anyone who's thinking of coming into this country illegally, we can't do better. He's just, the way he looks, the way he talks, the plainness of the way he speaks, the direct nature of it. This is the sort of thing where he would have been branded as some sort of a racist. They would have done a full freak out all across the news media. But now people aren't getting their news, and they're certainly not getting their cues from the establishment news media. But beautiful stuff. Not as beautiful. Venezuelan gangs are trying to recruit children from migrant families. The NYPD has raised a red flag on this, has gotten to such a level that CBS News has even reported it. So mainstream news is even on this. So that's when you know something's hit critical mass, where it breaks out of the Breitbarts of the world and it goes into the CBSs of the world. When they're willing to say, we might have an issue here, that is when you know it's going to become a big deal. Okay, so one of the methods that Donald Trump is going to have to focus on, he's going to have to focus on using whatever leverage he can in order to secure the border. And one of the things that he needs to be doing is not as just building a wall or cracking down on these woke mayors like in Denver. It's not that stuff. He also needs to be disciplining Mexico and also China. It's one of these things where the fentanyl comes from somewhere, and a lot of it is made in China. And as far as all the reports that I'm reading, China is not suppressing its production of fentanyl as of now. And this is their government activity, according to, I'm reading a tweet here from a guy named Charles Fain Lemon, who's a Manhattan Institute fellow. He's pointing out the Chinese government actively subsidizes the manufacturers that produce key fentanyl procedures, or precursors, probably procedures too. But this is a major thing that's going on, is that China has not been disciplined in this way, and then Mexico has not been disciplined. In fact, Joe Biden's made it easier, and Kamala Harris have made it easier by reducing all of those border policies that Trump had put in place during his last year. So one thing that Trump can do is he can threaten tariffs. And so he's actually announced these threatening tariffs on Mexico and Canada. And he's basically said to Mexico, you need to block the fentanyl, which is going to be way easier said than done. and you're going to have to block any migrant caravans, or else you're going to be getting a 25% tariff. Now, my prediction is that, I don't know if this is necessarily going to come true, but I know that it's a very good point of leverage. Let me read you from Truth Social. Both Mexico and Canada have the absolute right and power to easily solve this long-simmering problem, Trump wrote. We hereby demand that they use this power, and until such time they do, it is time for them to pay a very big price. And he goes on to explain that if Mexico cooperated on, if Mexico cooperates, you don't need a tariff. But he says all products coming in for the ridiculous open border will be in effect until such time as drugs, in particular fentanyl, and all illegal aliens stop the invasion of our country. So good. We need it because it's got to send a signal that there's a willingness to take extraordinary measures. Because believe it or not, any short-term potential increases in prices from things that come from Mexico, like your avocado prices or whatever, would be worth it if that meant that illegal aliens weren't taking over our cities and people like Lake and Riley weren't getting brutally murdered by Tren de Aragua members. Make sense? And the bottom line is, I think Mexico will see it in their best interest to make sure that Trump gets what he wants. It's interesting to see Mexico's crazy socialist president, Claudia Sheinbaum, firing a warning shot back at Trump, saying a tariff will be met with another tariff in response, and so forth, until we place common companies at risk. Maybe she has to say this, but do you think Trump is scared of her? These migrants coming through, they're using the CBP One app. We're going to have to get that under control as well. So there's a lot of work to be done. But the implication that there will be tariffs, I honestly think will be a big thing. He also wants them on Canada, and Canada deserves it. Canada is a left-wing authoritarian state. For those of you who missed my episode yesterday, it was a long-form conversation with Emma Jo Morris, who was a reporter for me at Breitbart for several years. Before that, she broke the laptop from hell story at the New York Post. And she's also a longtime Montreal resident. She lives in New York now, but she knows Montreal very well. And she's really explaining how there's no free speech in Canada. And the bottom line is that Trudeau runs the place as in an increasingly authoritarian way. So one of those things where if Trump is able to leverage Canada for tariffs, that would, I think that would mitigate any of the calls that he's going to be a racist. That's for one. And also Canada deserves to have a little pressure put on them as well. They're not a free people. And it is a little heartbreaking. That's why the premise of yesterday's episode was whether or not we should actually liberate Canada. Because it is, they are not helpful to us in a lot of ways where they could be. They have a hugely pro-migration government, which I think encourages all those countries south of our border to ramp up the illegal immigration towards America. So I'm excited about this. Very good. And I am just waiting. I can't wait. It's happening where our economy is going to be roaring back in a major way. Consumer confidence, 16-month high, flowing from Trump's electoral victory. That's nice, right? 16-month high. But there's still some bad news. Thanksgiving turkey prices up 23%. You know what? It's that peaches and cream or whatever that turkey's name. If it's just supply and demand, we're going to actually have to execute peaches anyway. If we did that, then I'm pretty sure things will get better. But it's really the Democrats who have the best, are looking out for what's best for Americans. I learned this from this new Congressman, McBride, who dresses as a woman, who was explaining that to care about which bathrooms men use in the Congress, that is actually anti-worker. If we care about these things, let me play you a little bit of this clip.
I think we are all united that attempts to attack a vulnerable community are not only mean-spirited, but really an attempt to misdirect. Because every single time we hear the incoming administration or Republicans in Congress talk about any vulnerable group in this country, we have to be clear that it is an attempt to distract. It is an attempt to distract from what they are actually doing. Every single time we hear them say the word trans, look what they're doing with their right hand. Look at what they're doing to pick the pocket of American workers, to fleece seniors by privatizing Social Security and Medicare. Look what they're doing, undermining workers. And here's also what we have to be clear about, because I think the last week has been a prime example of this. Every bit of time and energy that is used to divert the attention of the federal government to go after trans people is time and energy that is not focused on addressing the cost of living for our consumers.
No, it's actually focused on trying to make sure that we end this contagion as fast as humanly possible. I remember recently, it wasn't that recently, it was probably about 6-7 years ago, where I was listening to a podcast. It was a Hollywood culture podcast. And the conversation was very casually about how anyone who really spends any time on trans stuff is all they're doing is trying to discriminate against a marginalized and very small group of people. Well, that group of people is rapidly growing, and it is dividing families. It's tearing apart families. And the rates of depression and suicide for the people who go through the trans conversion is not higher. Is not lower than the people who remain with their biological sex as their identity. So it really is a mental illness in the vast majority of cases, if not all cases. And it's time to be a little less tolerant of just people imposing their transness on the rest of us. It is not good. It would just try having 4 children in this environment and see how concerned you are if you think this is a non-issue. I was guilty of this a few years ago. I said that I don't know, how much time should we be doing on the trans stuff? And one of my colleagues at Breitbart, one of my editors, said, I've got a child in middle school, and they deal with a new child deciding they're trans every day. Someone's changing their pronouns, someone's changing their name, someone's changing their identity. And it was a light bulb that went off in my head. And I thought, oh, okay. So this is a real issue that families are facing. And if you want to go out there and you want to act like it's some sort of we're hurting American workers because we think people with penises should go to the boys' room. No, thank you. Very, very odd stuff that the left is obsessed with, and I think it gives us a real shot. All right, let me read you some email and respond to it. Aloha@alexmarlow.com. Hey, Alex, could you please share what you did to get in such great shape? Ooh. Your new show is great. Really miss you on Breitbart Morning. You can't listen. It's not the same without you. Roman Block says that. Well, I'm on a fitness journey, and I'll spend some time on this a while down the road. But I probably lost about 25, 30 pounds over the last year and a half. And I will tell you this for the sake of time, I'll keep it top line. But the bottom line, what worked for me is we're eating too much. That's number one. We're eating too much. And we talk ourselves out of something, and we try to think that if we eat these foods at this time and we stop eating at 8 o'clock, and if we only eat whole grains, and if we take a bunch of supplements, and then that'll something. No. If you're in a calorie deficit, you will lose weight. So how do you get there? So I've seen people have smaller meals that are, higher in protein. That's a good way to do it. But for me, what I found was I can fast. So basically, once I'm done with dinner, I'm not eating again until lunch the next day. I'm eating as light of a lunch as possible, which is good because I don't like having a lot in my belly during the day. And then I basically enjoy myself at dinner, and that's it. And so that's all the eating I will do on most days. And if you can live that way, it will work, but you got to be patient. That's not a way to do it as a sprint, but I didn't need to do it as a sprint. I was trying to do it over a long period of time. The other thing that I did that is another thing that people don't talk about, which seems pretty obvious, I work out hard. When I'm in the gym, when I'm running, I'm going for it. And there's a lot of talk about how all you got to do is walk. I mean, it's very time consuming to walk 10,000 steps a day. I'm all for it if you can do it. It's great. But that's hard. I don't have time to walk 10,000 steps a day. But I'll tell you, when I get down to the gym and the question is, do I go medium or do I go hard? I can go hard. And it just seemed like something that I don't know why that one I don't see any conversation about at all. So those are the two things that work for me, is that when I'm on the bike, or when I'm on the treadmill, or when I'm lifting weights, I'm trying to go as hard as I can do that day. Trying to go towards nearly failure. And that worked for me, worked for my personality. And not eating so much. That's it. So I'll explain that down the road. But I want to be helpful to people in that regard, because I do think we are in an obesity epidemic. And part of the reason is we're overthinking it, and we're getting sold a bunch of miracle ideas online when you really just need to eat less. So how do you convince yourself to eat less? That's the main thing. All right. Great question. Thank you. Dear Alex, California is on the cusp of stealing another Republican congressional seat. John Duarte is only 200 votes ahead of Adam Gray. Duarte's sizable election day lead has been shrinking every day, and they find more votes to count. They've apparently counted 98% of the ballots, but it looks like they're going to flip it before they reach 100%. And this is gravely sober. John Farnham signs. So California is designed to allow for cheating. I don't know if it's legal cheating. I don't know if it's illegal cheating. No one knows. I have no sense that the system has integrity. But I will tell you that the way the system works is that you count ballots for a week and a half after the election. This is completely unnecessary. Florida gives you the election results within an hour or so after people are done voting. But we've set up the system specifically with no voter ID, with you can vote by mail until the very last second, that to make it very easy to cheat. And if it should make you suspicious, it also favors community organizers. LA in particular and the Bay Area in particular have hugely networked left-wing organizations. And these networks are very good at getting people to turn in ballots. So the community organizing element of it is a huge factor in why Democrats have maintained power in these areas, because they can simply outwork Republicans. The Republican Party in California is typically a mess. It's been that way since I was in college, and I realized this. Not particularly organized state party. And the Democrats should take advantage of them. So the longer you count votes, the more it's going to favor Democrats. Now, some Republicans, like my Congressman Mike Garcia, who unfortunately lost his race in a tight race this time, but he got very sophisticated at his mail-in voting operation, which is really good. But you know what happens? The Democrats just outwork you even more, and they find other ways to do it. So it's a shame, but that is part of the reality that we're living in right now. And thank you for the question, but we've got to try to win back these blue states and then change the laws so they were higher integrity. But until we do that, we have to just continue to outwork the other side, and we need to continue to try to register people to vote and make sure they all vote. And every vote counts. All right. Greg Vergara asks, Alex, I wanted to write this email before I listened to this episode. I know you probably meant it somewhere tongue-in-cheek, but a thought occurred to me as I read the title. For some reason, there's a cadre of he's talking about the episode, Do We Need to Liberate Canada, from yesterday with Emma Joe. For some reason, there's a cadre of so-called conservatives who are enamored with Vladimir Putin. They make every excuse in the book for his acts of aggression. Well, he wouldn't have attacked Ukraine if he didn't have NATO knocking on his door. What would we do if we were in that situation? Aren't we kind of in that situation? We have a literal tyrannical dictatorship brewing to the north and a narco-terrorist state to the south. What's it going to take for us to wake up to these cold, hard facts? Food for thought now on your latest episode. All right, a lot in this email that I want to address. It's a good email. The first one is conservatives enamored with Putin. That's not me, and I don't get that people are. So that is real. The next thing he says is noting that Putin would have invaded Ukraine if not for the implication that NATO wanted to welcome in Ukraine. This is not only something I ascribe to, but I think I was the one who mainstreamed the idea. I wrote about it extensively in Breaking Biden, and I really do think that it got mainstream from there. So I actually agree with that point. And then the next thing is, are we in that situation? Thus, should we liberate Canada? Do we feel like with the narco state of Mexico at our south and Canada at our north, which is a tyrannical left-wing mess in some ways, at least politically speaking, and makes it so that it's more likely that illegal immigrants come into America because they can also go north? Interesting question. It was a little bit tongue-in-cheek and a little bit not literal, exploring the concept with the Emma Joe episode. And I don't really think we should, put boots on the ground in Canada. I certainly don't think we should have a guerrilla war with the narco state of Mexico right now, but it's worth exploring that concept because maybe it puts people in check. Maybe it makes people consider whether or not there's another approach other than us sitting here between two struggling countries and doing nothing. Maybe there's something creative that can be done, and maybe it could inspire people in Canada perhaps to stand up more for their rights, to try to use their right to vote to try to make wholesale changes. We can be supportive of that. Maybe we can be persuasive. We're cool now. And also send a signal that we are willing to use the military against the Mexican cartels, which is maybe some would regard that as an act of war. When they're bringing in fentanyl into our country and they're killing our children, then maybe that's the place to at least use the threat of war, perhaps. So I'm not a pure peacenik like some people in the America First right. I think we're in way too many wars. I think the Middle East wars have not gone well. I think us meddling all over the world has not gone well, and we shouldn't. But I will say that this is our own backyard, and I don't like what's happening in Mexico. And at a minimum, we need to rely on them and use things like tariffs, like Donald Trump is doing, to make sure that they crack down on their own people so that things don't get any worse than they are now. But very much a big idea that's worth exploring, and we'll continue to do that stuff on the Alex Marlow Show. All right, that's it for today. The intention is to do another show for tomorrow. Telling 10,000 friends and family members about the broadcast is big. aloha@alexmarlow.com if you want to correspond with me, ask a question or leave a comment about anything. Tell me what we should do if Musk and Don Jr. give me MSNBC to run. What should I do? Who should I program on the show? And a big thank you to producer Misty, who had to deal with one of my 7 colds I get a year today, because I got little kids. So they get about 7 colds a year on average, I think the studies are. And I get every one they get. So it's an issue when you're a broadcaster, when you're a professional talker. So there's a problem today, and she's helped me out on that, which I appreciate. And that's today's show. We will talk to you tomorrow for more Alex Marlow Show.